London, 1838. A young woman, alone, at night. There is a knock at her door. She opens it slowly, just a crack. A man in a cloak and helmet stands in the darkness. "We've caught Springheel Jack," he says. "Fetch me a light." She believes him. She should not have believed him. Because when she returned with the candle, the man pulled back his cloak. His eyes were glowing red. His face was not human. And then he opened his mouth and breathed blue fire directly into her face. What happened next was reported in every major newspaper in Britain. But here is the question nobody asked.
Was any of it actually real? This is Drawn and Buried, and today we are going to find out exactly how a city scared itself into creating one of the most terrifying figures in history. A monster that may have inspired Batman himself.
To understand Springheel Jack, you have to understand London in 1837. This was not the London you imagine today. This was a city in the middle of an identity crisis. Thousands of people were pouring in from the countryside every single month, drawn by the factories, the industry, the promise of work.
And for the first time in their lives, they were surrounded by strangers. No one knew their neighbors. No one knew who was walking behind them at night. The anonymity of a big city was completely new and completely terrifying. And when people are terrified, they tell stories. Ghost stories, monster stories, stories of figures that leap over rooftops and drag women into the dark. London in 1837 was already full of these urban legends, half believed, half invented, passed from person to person like a disease. And then, in October of 1837, something real happened. A girl named Mary Stevens was crossing Clapham Common, a village area just outside London, alone at night. A figure leapt from the alley, seized her, kissed her face, and tore at her clothes with what she described as claws. Cold, corpse-like. Not human. She screamed, and just like that, the figure was gone, vanished into the night before anyone could catch him. The next day, the same figure reportedly leapt directly in front of a moving carriage, causing it to crash, and then escaped by jumping a 9-foot wall. A 9-foot wall. Word spread immediately, village to village, mouth to mouth, and the name that attached itself to this figure was not a human name. They called him a ghost, and that detail, that one detail, is where this story gets truly interesting. For months, reports pinged around the outskirts of London. A ghost that attacked women, that leapt impossible distances, that left no trace. Small papers printed the rumors. People repeated them. The story grew. Then on January 9th, 1838, something changed everything. Sir John Cowan, the Lord Mayor of London himself, brought Springheel Jack to an official government session. He read aloud a letter he had received. The letter claimed that a group of aristocrats, wealthy men with too much time and too little conscience, had made a bet. One of them would dress as a devil, as a bear, as a ghost, and terrorize as many people as possible. The letter claimed several women had been deprived of their senses, driven permanently insane. The Lord Mayor believed it. He was convinced this was the work of cruel, upper-class pranksters treating the poor as entertainment. But by bringing it to public attention, he made the biggest mistake possible. Because now it was not just the small papers reporting it. It was the Times, London's most powerful newspaper. And once the Times touched it, Springheel Jack became unstoppable. Which brings us back to where we started.
February 19th, 1838. Jane Allop. Her father's house. A knock at the door. The figure in the cloak said he was a policeman, said they had caught Springheel Jack in the lane.
She brought him a candle, and the moment the light hit his face, the cloak came back. Glowing red eyes, a face described as demonic, and then blue fire exhaled directly from his mouth. His hands, metallic, cold, tearing at her dress, scraping at her neck. She screamed, she fought, she made it to the door, she survived. Days later, another woman, another alley, another figure with a lantern.
More blue fire, more metallic claws. Here is where it gets fascinating. A man was actually arrested, found boasting in a nearby tavern that he was Springheel Jack, found with a large coat and a candle. But then Miss Allop herself got him released because she insisted, absolutely insisted, that the real Springheel Jack had breathed blue fire, and this man could not do that. That is how he walked free. Now, about that blue fire, here is something the newspapers never mentioned. Contemporary books on stage magic, available to anyone in London at the time, explained exactly how to breathe blue flame. You kept an alcohol-soaked sponge in your mouth. You exhaled through a candle or a lantern. Blue fire. Every single time Springheel Jack breathed fire, he had first asked his victim for a candle, or he was already carrying a lantern. Every single time. This was not supernatural. This was a trick, a cruel, deliberate, practiced trick performed on women, alone, at night, by someone who had rehearsed it, and that somehow is more disturbing than the supernatural explanation. But here is what no one could have predicted. Springheel Jack did not stay a monster. The first fictional pamphlet treating him as a literary character appeared in 1838, the same year as the attacks. Plays followed, then the penny dreadfuls. The cheap pulp fiction sold to London's working class on promises of action and darkness and danger. And in those stories, something extraordinary happened. By 1886, Springheel Jack was no longer the attacker, he was the hero. A mysterious nighttime vigilante. A secret identity. Wealthy by day, terrifying by night. Every time he removed his mask, the gasp of the character witnessing it was cut off right before they said his name. Does that sound familiar? A wealthy man, a secret identity, metal claws, a terror of the night, a bat-wing cape. Look at a silhouette from a 1901 penny dreadful. The cape, the hood, the ears. Springheel Jack directly influenced Zorro. Zorro influenced the Shadow. The Shadow influenced Batman. A figure that began as a cruel prankster terrorizing working-class women in the fog became the template for the greatest superhero ever created. Truth is genuinely stranger than fiction. So was Springheel Jack real? Almost certainly yes. One or more real attackers, real cruelty, real victims. But the newspapers took something real and turned it into something impossible. They needed the monster to be bigger, to jump higher, to be more inhuman with every report. Because monsters sell newspapers, and working-class London needed something to fear that made sense of everything terrifying about the new world they were living in. An upper-class devil with metal claws and industrial technology preying on the poor in the fog. That was not just a story. That was the entire Industrial Revolution wrapped in a cloak and given glowing red eyes. This has been Drawn and Buried. If this is your first time here, you should know it only gets darker from here.